Troy Hinckley's project that I'm talking about. I was going to mention this in my presentation, but it's possible, theoretically, that Troy Hinckley, his project could be used as a scheme implementation that actually runs my own version of Emacs. And although, this is completely theoretical, and I don't know how difficult that would be, but if Troy Hinckley implemented enough of the R7RS standard in Rust, it would theoretically be possible to run the Gypsum editor in Troy Hinckley's own editor. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I thought it was worth mentioning, at least in the questions and answers. I also mentioned this in the presentation. I wanted to see Robin Templeton's project presentation, but unfortunately it's going to be at like 4 in the morning for me. So I'm going to try and watch that tomorrow, but that's also going to be a very interesting project to keep an eye on if you're interested in Scheme. That's the project where you've got the guile interpreter running inside of the Emacs process. It's dynamically linked as a library. I'm ready for questions from anybody. You can ask or you can type. It's up to you. Okay, let me check the Etherpad. Let's see here. I'm not sure if I'm doing that right. Let me check one more time. Oh, there it goes. Let's see, so this is... I didn't know about that first bit of history. Oh, I've heard RMS say that Scheme Guile is just a nicer Lisp, but I didn't know there were concrete talks attempts to use Guile for Emacs that early. Let's see, that was from Janicki. I'm curious to know how the hell guile-emacs deals with all the dynamically scoped modules out there. Is there any effort to automatically modularize and name? Let's see. Guile-emacs. If that's the that might be a better question for Robin Templeton. In my own project, I have just there's no module system for Emacs Lisp. There's a module system for Scheme, and the Emacs Lisp interpreter runs in its own environment. So the require system or whatever system module system that Emacs has, once it's implemented, all of that would just happen inside of the Emacs Lisp environment, which is inside of the Scheme environment. And environments are objects in Scheme. So I think a more difficult question is how to handle threading, and Scheme has very good threading built in Surfy 18, but I don't think it will be easy to write foreign Emacs Lisp foreign bindings to the Scheme multi-threading implementation. Emacs Lisp is just not cut out for that kind of thing. So I think each Emacs Lisp, you could, I suppose, have multiple threads, each running their own Emacs Lisp environment, Scheme would make that very simple to do. And then there'd just be a question of how you would get those different interpreters to communicate with each other, perhaps using the same protocol that's used by the Emacs server. But I haven't thought that far ahead yet. Would it be possible to support a GUI toolkit other than the GTK, like how Emacs still supports Lucid? Yes, this is absolutely a goal of the project. I'm trying to keep the backend separate as possible. The Scheme has what you call parameters, and these are like global variables that are still somewhat thread safe. And every call to the GUI goes through a parameter. So the Emacs, the interpreter and the editor logic is all in one module. And then that module calls out into a separate GUI module. And then you can implement different GUI modules. So you could have one for GTK3, one for GTK4. If you want to write the extern-C bindings around Qt or fulltick, that would certainly be possible as well. It would be nice maybe to have an SDL implementation based maybe on Chickadee or some kind of immediate mode GUI, something like that. But definitely GTK3 through guile-gi is the reference implementation. Things start there. But I'm very interested in supporting other GUIs, yes. Let's see. Question, do you plan to provide improvements to ELisp as a language or focus on a compatibility layer to facilitate all new extensions in Scheme? Yeah, the second one. I want to move off to Scheme. I would like for this project to try and keep up to date with each new release of Emacs and Emacs Lisp. That's a difficult moving target to follow, I realize, but to the greatest extent possible, any new features to Emacs Lisp will be pulled in from GNU Emacs. If we happen to be able to implement something cool in Scheme and be able to port it over to Emacs Lisp, then sure, it would be nice to be able to upload or to submit that upstream to the GNU Emacs. But I think I would prefer to have new features written in Scheme. I would like this Gypsum to be more of a Scheme app platform that just happens to be able to also run Emacs Lisp. That's how I see it. Of course, this will be a community project, so I'm open to debate about that if anybody wants to convince me otherwise. Why is being able to interpret all of init.el useful goal? Sure, there's a lot of code written in ELisp. Can we consider... Oh, it's still being written. Please go ahead and finish writing. Can we consider a translator like utility to convert ELisp to Scheme once guile-emacs has become a reality? Certainly. For the time being, I just wanted to get the interpreter running. So the guile-emacs Lisp, the one that was written in 2011 that I didn't write, that actually does compile to, I think it's the tree intermediate representation. It's one of the intermediate languages that Guile uses to compile Guile Scheme itself. So the Emacs Lisp that was written before actually does that. It actually compiles and makes use of the entire Guile compiler toolchain and actually produces like JIT compilable binaries, which is really cool. Like I said, that's the one that I had trouble getting to work properly. And so maybe we can follow that architecture. I'm not sure how to do that, but I would like to be able to do some kind of translating, keeping in mind that we want to have this be portable to various schemes. And so Guile makes this very easy, but other schemes don't. Gambit might do this pretty well as well. It compiles to C and then compiles C down to dynamically linkable library. So yeah, I think probably the most portable, I'm just thinking out loud right now, most portable implementation will just be able to translate Emacs Lisp directly to Scheme, which is not what the old guile-emacs Lisp implementation does. That goes to tree.el, so it's very, very guile specific, can't be ported. But yeah, if we could somehow get Emacs Lisp translated to Scheme and then compiled, say in Scheme or Gambit or MIT Scheme or one of those other compilers, that would be very cool. And I would absolutely love to do that. And I would very quickly accept any code into the code base that would do that. Oh, and to answer the question about init.el, it's just because people spend a lot of time on their configs, and it would be nice if you're starting to use this new editor and want it to be similar to Emacs users, just the Emacs community in general, and people who are familiar with using Emacs. It would be more useful to everybody in the Emacs community if this were more compatible with GNU Emacs. And so that's why I think that's an important goal. Question is not yet. Great. Oh, here comes another question. Okay, what is the plan to handle ELisp packages that depend on third-party or external libraries like libgit or magit or ripgrep? So that's going to be tricky. It depends on how these external packages are linked into Emacs. If it's going to be a dynamic library like Robin Templeton's project, which you load the libguile library into the Emacs process, that is going to be extremely difficult. So if you have like an external library like I don't know, libgit or what's the GUI thing? Cabal. No, not Cabal. Cairo. libcairo to do SVG graphics and so on. You can do that very easily with Guile, but then on top of that, implementing Emacs Lisp bindings to it like you've got two layers there, and that makes things pretty difficult. So it's possible, and to some degree may be necessary for example, Cairo. If we want to do SVG graphics the way that Emacs Lisp does, we're going to have that. So that would be necessary. We would have to have those two layers. Yes, let's do that. But if it's like for Magit, you can just call out to your Git process, and then you're just using the regular process APIs that Emacs Lisp has. And that can be, already like Guile has some very good implementations for process management. And so it would just be a matter of wrapping up those in the Emacs Lisp form bindings. So yeah, dynamic libraries I want to try to avoid, and I would prefer to do things more through, launching a child process in the Emacs process, and then communicating over the standard in, standard out channels. That's the easier way to do things, I think, because then you can just use the process library that Emacs already has, and you can just reuse all of that code. I'm not sure how ripgrep works, unfortunately, but I believe that's also a process, a child process. So we can just reuse all of the Emacs Lisp code that does that already. We just need to make sure that the the process management implementation in Scheme is properly bound to Emacs Lisp, and it works the same as GNU Emacs does. Once that's all set, then these porcelains, like around Git, should fall into place without too much difficulty, hopefully. How about Schemacs as a name? I like the name. I like that name. I haven't really looked into, like, is that already used or is that going to be confusing? But certainly something we can discuss. Another thing I should mention, I should probably set up a server or something like Discord or something like that. No, Discourse, not Discord. Discourse, the open source one, where we could actually like chat about this stuff. For the time being, ActivityPub, mostly Mastodon, is how I communicate with people in real time. That or email. So if you want to get a hold of me, check the notes for this presentation, and just send me an email. Any question at all is fine. If you want to contribute code, if you want to just learn how to contribute code, send me any questions. It's fine. I'm happy to answer them. And we can talk about the name as well. Okay, why is it not feasible for the Emacs layer that interprets Emacs Lisp, the core in C, have a scheme interpreter instead of using guile? Let's see, I have to, okay. Emacs layer interprets Emacs Lisp, the core in C, have a scheme interpreter instead of using guile. Okay, so that the question XLARSX is asking, XLARS, X. So Lars is asking, is it not feasible for there to be an Emacs layer that interprets Emacs Lisp have a scheme interpreter? This is Ramin Templeton's project, and they're presenting later today. So check the roster and be sure to see that presentation, because that's exactly what Ramin Templeton is doing. That's not what I'm doing, though. I'm trying to create something in Scheme. But yes, there is an attempt to get Scheme to run, and a Scheme interpreter to run inside of Emacs itself, and it has its own method of binding to Emacs Lisp functions and translating data like list structures between Guile Scheme and Emacs Lisp. Robin will explain all of that in their presentation. Okay, I think I've got through all the questions on Etherpad, but I'm going to hang out here for a bit longer. And yeah, feel free to do a video chat with me or send me more questions on Etherpad or here in the big blue button. And so I'm just going to hang out. And thanks for asking all your questions. And yeah, I look forward to working with all of you if you're interested. So take it easy.
Thanks so much for the talk, and looking forward to seeing some of your progress as this moves forward. Exciting space. We'll go ahead and leave the room open for you, and thanks for offering to hang out and chat with other people that come by. Feel free to throw something in the chat if you want to remind people you're still here. Meanwhile, on the stream, we have moved along to our next talk on Rust, and that is just getting started. But again,
okay.
We're continuing to record this, and I'll just keep an eye on it to stop the recording.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was awesome. So it seems like it's slowed down here for the Q&A. I don't see anybody else on BBB, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. We can start it back up. You should have permission to do that.
And I would say,
Okay.
yes, there's a lot of things you can do with this. You could handle process output.
Yeah, I'm going to try and join over the chat for the next talk. I'm not sure if I can do both big blue buttons at the same time.
You should be able to just watch your mute settings and mute
Okay.
tab settings and whatever all you have to avoid bleed through.
Okay.